The last few years have given us an onslaught of terrible news 24/7. The whole world seems to be constantly on the verge of doomsday. War, plagues, recessions. And the best part is that this is how we tend to bookend our days. I'll flip to my phone in the morning and I usually start my day reading about the extinction of some adorable species I've never even heard of. To calm my mind before bed, I'll read up on the latest terrible thing some political leader did in a country I don't even live in. All in the morally righteous idea that what I am doing is integral to civilization, that I'm staying informed. How dark were those days leading up to the Ukrainian invasion, where thousands streamed the first missile strikes as they were cast over the border? How important is it for you to really see history unfold before your own eyes? The psychologist Rolf Dobelli, who also wrote The Art of Thinking Clearly, recently came out with a book that puts this entire idea into question. Stop reading the news. Dobelli developed an addiction to the news, whether it was Twitter, mainstream networks, or the primitive newspaper. He began to notice the negative consequences of such an addiction and developed a radical abstinence in order to free himself from the news. But why should you do the same? We've all been there. You absolutely want pizza, but you have to set up an account for delivery. What's the harm in using your Facebook login? Pretty soon you're using the same password for every little impulse buy. Well, guess what happens when your Facebook account gets hacked? Hackers will have access to every single account linked to Facebook. And that's the beginning. There's the potential for identity theft, crimes committed under your name, loans under your name. Whatever your worst nightmare is, all it takes is one security breach. That's why I started using the sponsor of this video, NordPass, an essential cybersecurity tool that goes beyond the scope of a simple password manager. It's a simple, easy to use, and very secure password manager created by the cybersecurity experts who built NordVPN, the advanced online security and privacy app trusted by more than 14 million users worldwide. For convenience, NordPass lets you store your passwords all in one place and log in faster. And for your security, NordPass uses a data breach scanner to find out if there's been any breaches and what type of data has been compromised. It is also a zero-knowledge password manager, meaning that no one else but you can see what's in your encrypted vault. Get exclusive access to NordPass's best offer in the link below, or use code Sisyphus55 at the checkout to get an additional month for free. This comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Since 2010, Dobelli claims that he is being entirely news-free. He sees the effects in the form of greater focus, clearer thinking, more free time, less stress, and more valuable insights. But how could this be? Doesn't the news feed us important information? Well, the news feeds us snippets of random events about international meetings, business scandals, awkward tweets, missile launches, and so on. This breaking information tends to be extremely irrelevant to your own life. Do we really need to know about the cabinet reshuffle in Italy? Well, if you're not Italian, it is unlikely that such a piece of information truly is breaking news. And can you even name a single member of your own local cabinet, let alone a local politician? Somebody who actively impacts your daily existence. Why do we care so much about irrelevant information? We like knowledge, and we are knowledge seekers. The more relevant the knowledge, the better. Notably, the way that the news increasingly presents this knowledge is under the illusion that it is relevant. Hence, we hear phrases like breaking news to give us the sense that this is the most relevant thing that has happened right now. And frankly, what's going on elsewhere usually seems more interesting and novel than whatever is happening in your neighborhood. So we gravitate towards these tidbits that taste palatable but do nothing to satisfy our search for actual relevant knowledge. It keeps us hooked. Dobelli compares the news to sugar, which keeps us in a constant state of consumption. Even worse, like sugar, we tend to only become aware of the side effects until way later. Dobelli points to the fact that much of what the media fails to report on is the stuff you'd actually want to know about. For example, the release of the first internet browser on November 11th, 1993 wasn't reported on. What was? The Israeli PM meeting with Bill Clinton and the Pope fracturing his shoulder. As he argues, it's unlikely that the stuff that will impact us for decades to come will actually be talked about. Most of it is largely irrelevant. But how should one define relevance? Quite simply, whatever allows you to make better decisions and allows you to understand the world better. This is one's circle of competence. Anything inside the circle is your area of expertise. Anything outside of the circle is something that you don't understand. Without preaching about becoming a complete specialist, it is usually more efficient to stick to the spots that you generally understand. This saves time and allows you to go deep instead of broad. That is, to deeply understand a topic through reading longer form articles rather than short snippets that leave you enraged only to forget them moments later. But you do need to know what's going on in the world, right? The news gives us the facts of the world, so we aren't just blissfully unaware of what's happening. However, Dobelli argues that these facts are usually no more than the consequences and side effects of deeper underlying causes. If anything, this constant influx of disparate news stories only further confuses your idea of what's going on. Usually you just end up with an overwhelming sense that everything is happening and you have no idea why. News corporations and consumers both fall prey to the same mistake, confusing the presentation of facts with insights into the functional context of the world. Instead, Dobelli argues that we should read books and long articles if we truly wish to understand what is happening and do justice to the complexity of the world around us. We also naturally have a few biases that can be exploited by news media. Negativity bias, the fact that we respond more sensitively to negative stimuli than positive ones, leads to an overall more miserable sense of the world if we keep consuming news. This also incentivizes journalists to report more on negative events than positive ones, as the former will more likely lead to engagement. I mean, what are the odds that a news article reports on how many people didn't die in a hospital fire? Instead, the headlines usually have a death count listed with the amount injured and the total financial cost. The news also feeds us negative information that we have no control over. This can lead to a level of cynicism and dread that actually teaches us to be passive. After being confronted with so many terrible things at once all around the world, we begin to feel helpless. This is called learned helplessness, a sense of depressed hopelessness that can spill over into other areas of our life, including family and local issues, the kind of stuff we actually do have control over. Devote your energies to things you can influence. There are more than enough of those, but an earthquake on the other side of the planet isn't one of them. The news also plays into our confirmation bias. Despite that feeling that we truly are being informed and responsible seekers of knowledge, we more often than not seek out information that confirms our opinions. We're masters of interpreting new information so that it remains consonant with our previous point of view. The more news you consume, the more frequently you'll come across confirmatory information, even if your opinion is false. Instead, Dobelli suggests that you should always ask yourself what specific facts you would have to learn in order to change your mind about any belief or opinion you actively endorse. The news also exploits hindsight bias, the error we make in confidently understanding why something happened only after it happened. As he notes, articles before the 2008 recession rarely predicted any recession occurring. And once it did happen, numerous articles would serve up one or two seemingly obvious explanations for the recession. If it was so obvious, why did almost nobody predict it? This is partially due to the nature of the news, which is constrained to only explaining a few explanatory factors because nobody wants to read a detailed academic report on their bathroom break. But ask yourself, is this really helping you understand the world? The news keeps the opinion volcano bubbling also. Whether it's climate change, artificial intelligence, or Sri Lanka, we immediately start forming an opinion despite our lack of knowledge about the issue. We form opinions on issues that don't really interest us, that cannot be fully answered, or that are too complex without in-depth analysis. This is due to the affect heuristic, which is simply put our reliance on emotions to make decisions. We either like or don't like something immediately. The news feeds us an insane amount of stimulus that leads to an affective response about issues that realistically require a more in-depth analysis. The news is constantly urging us to form opinions. This robs us of concentration and inner peace. You don't need an opinion on everything. It's okay to appear like you don't know everything. Part of the reason why we want to form an opinion is also because the news gives us the illusion that we are being empathetic to issues. It should be noted that the news doesn't cover those who are in the most urgent need of care and help. Rather, it covers the most shocking and striking disasters. Thus, slow-burning issues like the poor quality in indigenous reserves, the Palestinian conflict, and the rise of climate refugees are only ever really covered when they get super bad. And by bad, we mean profitable. Slow developments towards potential disasters, which may still be preventable, hardly ever make the news. Let me assure you, your humanity is not measured according to how much misery you consume on the news. There is an argument to be made that not watching the news is a point of privilege. The author is fairly comfortable and likely isn't personally impacted by many of the issues that deal with the news. And besides, engaging in the news is good for democracy, right? But Dobelli's argument isn't that you should bury your head in the sand. You should actively stay informed. But this is best done through cutting yourself off of the current form of what the news is. The more consumers signal to news media that this form of quick, speculative, and novel but largely irrelevant headlines is no longer desired, the better journalism will become. Or so he hopes. This is a utopian hope, for everyone to focus on their local environment and issues in the hopes of improving the world at large. And, if one is concerned about global issues, that they choose long-form reports, discussions with experts, and active steps to support such, as through donations rather than feeling bad about the world and scrolling to feel even worse. We live in a world of limitless information and limited attention. Let's be more thoughtful with where we direct our attention.